Don't ask about the details.
Yeah. So I figured, it'll come out when it comes out. But, I do think that, you guys sharing the resource angle, and then to keep following up every few weeks, just to let him know that, I haven't forgot about it. And I don't know. I mean, this is the group that I grew up with, I didn't grow up with them, but we were together all working at Home Depot for like almost 10 years together. And, I didn't realize how close we were until this happened, because we all kind of spread apart. But man, it was like I just recently had a friend reach out and just tell me, hey man, I love you. I want you to know I got your back. I know, you're far away. So it brought us together, because we had not all of us talked together for a while. But it's also, we're all kind of like just stunned, it's just, because you see that on TV and you're like, oh, it's never going to happen to anybody I know. And then it happens like the next day and you're like, what the heck's going on, So,
right.
But I appreciate you guys' information.
And also, Patrick, and just talking to some of my other, the widows in my group and the widowers, some have found that someone just being honest and saying, look, I don't know what you're going through. I don't know what to say to you, but just know that I'm there for you. That they found more helpful than, oh, I know exactly what you're going through. I lost my great-grandmother when those kind of things don't really help. But just an honesty, like, I can't imagine what you're going through, but just know that I'm here with you every step of the way.
Yeah, people relating like that is annoying a little bit. And I hate when people are like, well, they're in a better place now. Like,
yeah, try to avoid that too.
It doesn't help anyone. Unless they were really suffering in pain. I don't know. Then it makes sense a little bit if they were just, suffering so hard. But at the same time, I don't know. There really aren't the right words to say to somebody. What Kerry said is probably what I wanted to hear too. Just somebody saying, "Hey, I'm here. I'll check in with you in a little bit when things settle down, and I'm here no matter what. And if you need anything, and
well,
food
thank you
helps.
both very much.
He's probably not eating well. The gift cards for the food, like that, kind of was what Kerry said was a really decent idea.
Well, I guess
nobody wants to eat when they're grieving.
He's out in Utah, but I guess I'll reach out to my friends that are closer to him and just make sure, give him some suggestions that you guys have given me, and hopefully things will, we'll get through it together. I guess in the end, that's the bottom line is. We need to stick it out together. It's not just him on his own. It's us as a group. So, but have a nice day. And thank you. I appreciate you guys.
Thanks for calling in.
Thank you.
And okay. And, wow. You're in Fort Lauderdale, Kerry, and you've been following that case?
I am. I want to say that I might have shared the news article when I read that she was missing, and I was so troubled to see the outcome of it. I was really just hoping that she would be found. Maybe she had gotten lost or something. But yeah, it's been a very tragic case here. Small world.
Wow. And things like that are just tragic, and they shouldn't happen, and it's really sad. We have a caller, David. Hi, David. Thanks for calling in. Welcome to Moments of Clarity.
Hi, Tiffany. This is my first time calling in.
Yeah, thank you so much.
And you're welcome. I love your broadcast.
Thank you.
Yeah, I definitely have a story of grief. I'm not a widow, but I lost my brother to suicide when I was 14. And 20 years later, I'm still affected by it,
Right.
And it was a shock to the system. I can remember that whole day, like everything that happened. And he had issues with substance abuse, and I figured that's what happened. He died of drugs. And so when they told me, he took his life, I didn't know how to handle it, And I think that I ended up using a lot of drugs, and I ended up being very angry for a long, long time. And I reached out to people, but I don't think they knew how to reach out to me, because it's a death that I don't think a lot of people can understand. And I think there's a lot of stigma to it. And so you end up dealing at 14 with this grief alone. I mean, I went to therapists, but in terms of my peers, I didn't get a whole lot of support. And so I would literally just stay in my house and get high just to numb myself from the pain that I was facing. And it just hurts. It still hurts. But part of the reason why I do mental health advocacy is because of my brother, you know, is I feel like had he spoken up and said, hey, you know what, I'm in a lot of pain, maybe he wouldn't have taken his life. I don't know. So
that's the worst part about suicide is that people have survivor guilt and all this stuff, you know, that should have, would have, what if, all of that. Yeah. And especially as a teenager, having that sudden loss, it rips a hole in your heart that it can never be filled. And I'm really sorry for your loss. And I don't know if anybody knows what to do or how to help a friend, especially your friends probably, you know, at that age wouldn't know what to do. They're, you know, just kids at that time. But
yeah, exactly.
And then you had to suffer alone, and your parents probably didn't know what to do. And it's just, it leaves people just confused completely. I've never met anyone that's been okay with someone that they loved that has taken their own life. You know, there's all this advocacy for mental health and everything, especially if it's substance abuse and all that stuff. Like, it's such a shame. What kind of advice would you give? And I know you're saying like just even 20 years later, you're still dealing with it. But what kind of advice would you give for someone that was going through something similar?
Yeah. Don't be afraid to reach out for help. You know, learn healthy coping mechanisms, because the negative coping mechanisms are going to kind of leave you behind. They're going to kind of keep you from grieving, because the grief is going to come back eventually. And I think the easy thing, I think, for some people is to go into addictive behaviors. But it always comes back. So deal with your grief, you know, as soon as you can. Reach out to people, and know that you don't have to face it alone.
Well said, David.
I think that's really important.
Yeah, great advice.
I'm so glad you called in. And first time caller, you get a bell for that. And sharing something so difficult. And so what do you do to celebrate your brother?
I write about him. I think about all the good times that we had. And I try to not dwell on the negative things, you know, because my brother was a sweet, sensitive person, and he wrote poetry just like me, and he was a good friend, and he was a good brother, and that's the way I look at it. And I choose to celebrate his life and not his death.
Well, good. I mean, that's what probably they want, you know. Was he older or younger, just out of curiosity?
He was older, so he had just turned 18. So he'd been 18 for about a month. And the thing is, he was not in my life at that moment. He was in and out of juvenile detention. So he had apparently run out of juvenile detention and knocked on my window. I was asleep. And so I wasn't awake to respond, and I would have knocked him to the ground, to be honest, and just kept him there. And he did what he did, like, you know, in a school close to my house. So it's traumatic, and you're dealing with, in a sense, PTSD.
Completely. I would definitely say yes.
Yeah. I didn't see it, thank God, but the trauma of that day, and you were talking earlier about I just want to be left alone, and that's how I was during that day. I mean, I didn't cry, I was angry. And I just stayed in my room and just listened to music. And it's funny, there's, not funny, but there's music I can't listen to, because whatever music I was listening to that day will automatically, you know, make me cry, or, but I dealt more with anger than sadness. I was angry, I was out of control, I would go to school and punch walls, because I was just, and so when I came back after my brother died, I was expected to just go on with life like it normally was, and I couldn't, you know, life had changed. And people expected me not to be angry, and it created all sorts of chaos and it took, 10, 15 years to really get over that anger, So that's the other part, I think, of being a suicide survivor is forgiveness.
Mm-hmm. When you go to therapy...
I love you.
Oh, go on, sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt. I'll say it after.
No, it's okay. I did go to therapy for many, many years. I was in inpatient treatment centers, outpatient treatment centers. I was in 12 steps. I mean, you name it. And it really, I didn't start really healing until I moved away from the trauma and started to write about it and started to do advocacy. That's when I started to really heal.
Mm-hmm. Talking about it helps.
Oh, talking about it definitely helps. And because I felt like alone. I felt alone, and I felt there's a lot of shame to it as well. When you lose someone to suicide, there's a shame aspect to it. And when I started meeting people who had the similar story, I realized, oh wow, I'm not the only one that dealt with this.
It's horrible to lose someone like that. And like you mentioned that he knocked on your window and you were asleep, and I bet you that's haunted you for a long time too. And
yeah, I think go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
But I can hear that from you. And the only thing that helped me was in therapy was EMDR to get past that survivor guilt. Like that was me. And then talk therapy and stuff like that, and doing what I'm doing now. But initially I was angry, and that's one of the stages of grief and loss. And I was just stuck in that stage. I wasn't in depression. I wasn't in acceptance. I was just bitter about everything. Sudden loss is what, what we did, what we could have done, what we didn't do, all that stuff. But EMDR really helped me. So not just for you, but for the other listeners, just something to think about. Therapy does help. It helps release that. But
that's amazing. I appreciate you listening. Because it's still at this stage, it's still painful to talk about it, openly.
Right.
But I feel like, go ahead.
I was going to say, I think that's one of the things that people just seem to not be able to get to understand. It's like when you lose someone, and yes, there's the funeral, but the funeral doesn't give you closure. Like it's more than just the person has died and now they're buried or cremated, and then now everything kind of goes back to normal. Like there's no normal to go back to, and so it kind of stays with you and it changes who you are. Like I know widowhood has affected like every part of my being, from physically to mentally to emotionally. It stays with you. It's not something that, oh, well, he's buried and now a year has gone by, you should just kind of go back to. There's no going back.
And you get freaked out about going to bed angry or saying goodbye to someone, or fear of abandonment, fear of loss, fear of getting close to someone because you might lose them, or fear of all this stuff that goes through your head because of how horrible it was to do it once. So it's like,
And I think sometimes I'm with that with my parents. My parents are older, and there's this fear of they're not going to be here forever. So I tell them I love them all the time because I don't know if they're going to be here tomorrow. That sort of fear.
Right.
And I also make sure that the people, my friends, I tell them I love them because they may not be here tomorrow. And it's just ingrained in me now. And I don't think people always understand that, why it's important for me to tell you how I feel, because life is short and you never know what's going to happen. So
exactly.
So true. Tomorrow's promised to no one.
I feel like on one hand, it's just like I want people to get it, but then I know that in order for them to really get it, that they have to have tragedy happen. But I just wish more people would understand that, it completely changes who you are and how you think. And, now there's anxiety, there's insecurities. And so I want people to get it, but I don't want them to get it. So
I don't want them to experience
understand, but not go through it.
Exactly.
Right.
I want to piggyback on something you had said earlier with the
Hang on,
caller.
David, 1 second.
Oh.
I'm late for my second break, but I'm going to keep you on the line, okay? Just hold on 1 second, and we have to take our second break, and we'll be back with Moments of Clarity in just a moment. Please stay tuned.
We will return to Moments of Clarity with Tiffany Warner after these messages.
This is the Tan Talk Radio Network.
Financial